Lasky,
Here.
Pearson, Stam,
Here.
Cummings.
Before we get into the consent agenda, let's go around the room and introduce ourselves again. For our new member, Jack Birmingham, you can tell us a few things about yourself.
Sure.
Limited to 30 seconds.
For 30 seconds, okay. Sure, I'm Jack Birmingham, officially John Birmingham. I'm, of course, John Birmingham's son who was on this before. He hasn't been able to influence me since middle school, so don't worry about that. But looking forward to giving back to the community and assisting everyone with moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you. You know everyone at the table, I would assume. I think you do. Okay. First is consent agenda, which is approval of the minutes from our May 17 meeting. Need a motion and a second.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
New business, we've got a number of resolutions. The first is 17-08. Approve lease agreement with H&M Commercial LLC, 43 East 7th Avenue.
Move to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, would you please take the roll?
Hintz,
Aye.
Lasky,
Aye.
Stam,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Birmingham,
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Carried at 6.
Next is Resolution 17-09, approve extension for option to purchase a portion of Parcel H, corner of Jackson Street and Pearl Avenue, Oshkosh Beer Brewing LLC. Motion and a second.
Move.
Second.
Discussion? Anyone from the public? We have presentation, okay.
Okay, yes, I'm Jeff Fulbright. I represent Oshkosh Beer and Brewing. I'd like to thank the RDA for the opportunity to present our reasons for the extension on Lot 2, the corner of Jackson and Pearl Streets. As background for people who are not familiar with this situation or myself, after receiving my brewing certification from Siebel Institute in Chicago, I intended to build a small brewery in Oshkosh, and this was in the early 90s. Later that same year, I had the good fortune to meet Jim Cook from Sam Adams Beer, and he had some excellent information for me. He suggested do as he did and contract brew to begin with while you're learning the process of running a brewery and a beer company. So what I did was I teamed up with Stevens Point, and I brewed Chief Oshkosh Red Lager, the first red lager in the nation, at Stevens Point for 4 years. Much was learned about the workings of a brewery up there. I sold the company in 1995, but said never again do this as a one-horse operation, and I wore too many hats. After 10 years of double-digit growth in the craft brewing industry, I was recently approached by numerous people to get re-involved in the craft brewing due to my experience. Also, craft brewing was now 23% of all beer sales versus 0.08 when I brewed Chief Oshkosh Red Lager. 2 years ago, I committed to re-enter the craft brewing if Oshkosh Brewery could be done well, aesthetically pleasing, large, and with a crack team of partners, investors, and an advisory board to help towards its success. We now propose a 15,000 square foot brewery with a 40,000 barrel capacity, a 1/4 acre highly landscaped beer garden, and a 2,000 square foot tap room. Nothing on this scale has been done in over 100 years in the entire Fox River Valley. We envision this as a 100-year showcase brewery that will stand long after we are gone and serve as a source of pride for the city and the people of Oshkosh. Now, for the principal reason for the extension request. It can be described in 3 terms, 3 words: extreme due diligence. Building a brewery of this scale involves multi-dozens of facets and elements, with each having multi-dozens of questions to follow each. For example, location, where, why, costs, is there room for expansion, visual concept, layout. Next, equipment, the most expensive facet of doing a brewery other than the building itself. What is the best for the dollar, the best for the bucks? Many companies make custom brewery elements, and we researched extensively who was the best, who was the most cost efficient, who could service best, and we spoke with many breweries and companies to find these answers. Then there's beer styles and everything that's involved with that. What sort of equipment lends itself best? What sort of ingredients? Projected inventories on a 4-year rotation. And there's marketing. What is our image? What do we want to show? What do we want to express? What is our packaging? What are our tools such as posters, displays, t-shirts, hats? All of these things are taken in consideration for the business plan, and which leads up to a financial pro forma and a prospectus to present to our patiently waiting investors and the banker that we have been working with, which is a community bank, Choice Bank, and Stan Lidl. Now, all of this information in turn continually evolves and grows as more information is obtained, resulting in constant additions, corrections, and editing. We've literally just finished. This is the narrative of the prospectus. This was just finished last week. This is 1 year worth of editing and corrections and adding information to it. So now the slowest part of this process is done. We are now planning on meeting with the interested parties to invest in this so we can get the ball rolling as far as deposits and everything that is involved with the cost of doing the brewing. Okay, so this is, excuse me, be with me a second here. We hope that our efforts to date demonstrate our attention to detail, which has been expensive, and that's what has taken the year of our option. But we need the city's help and the RDA's help to extend this so we can follow through on this and get this brewery for Oshkosh. We're looking for a target date of April, and I'm positive we can make that. But again, like I said, we need the city's help. And not unlike the Hinterland Brewery on the Packard development in Green Bay, we believe that the Oshkosh Beer and Brewing Brewery will have a very positive impact on not only the Riverwalk neighborhood, which we're lucky to be in, but Oshkosh in general. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can. There's a copy of the narrative there, if you could pass it around. Partner Chuck Hurdle from Dempsey Law will not allow us to turn it over because it becomes public domain, and we're not ready to do that yet. But it shows that we've accomplished that. The financial prospectus pro forma is not in there. Mr. Neagle, who is a partner and our CPA, was called away at the last minute, and he has the financial prospectus, pro forma, but that is complete for 5 years with all projections.
This map.
Another thing is, this is just one of many folders. This is just the sort of attention to detail we did just for equipment. I've got another several boxes of files for other aspects of the brewery, but this is what we call our attention to detail to do this, so we do it right.
I got 2 questions.
Sure.
Go ahead.
One for you, Mr. Fulbright, and that is 5 months sufficient enough to extend the option? Through November, I believe that would be, basically.
Well, like I said,
Are you able to meet, is that gonna get you where you need to be able to make your decision?
well, Ganther is going to be building, and he says it could probably be done, depending on the time of year, in 4 to maximum of 5 months to build the brewery itself. So,
No, I don't mean building it. All I mean is just to trigger your option to purchase the property.
I would.
Do you think in 5 months you're gonna be able to get enough investment to be able to make a decision after 5 months to purchase the property?
Probably 6 months for sure.
So you're asking for a 5-month extension on the option, is that correct?
5 to 6 months if possible.
5-month extension on the property, correct?
That's what's on the agenda.
Okay,
I
but with that,
assume you
we
could
can,
make it a
we can make
6-month.
it, okay.
I think you could make it
We
6.
can modify that. My other question is for the city, just in reference to the piece, to parcel, just wondering if there's any interest other than this project.
No.
Okay, thank you.
We have the proposal simply to extend the option, but you refer to help from the city. Are you thinking of help beyond extending the option?
As far as what?
Well, there are all sorts of, various things, mostly TIF projects.
I was told, of course, now that we're into the next year, when we started looking into what are the financial availabilities out there, that there was no TIF money last year, excuse me, no TIF money last year. It was used up for other things, but of course, we will check into that if it's available.
But we're acting simply on the extension. Obviously.
Right, today, just that. Sure.
Are there any other
Talking
questions?
about entertaining an amendment to go to 6 months?
That's what I heard discussed. They wrote
Need a
150.
formal amendment?
Yeah, I think you'd need an amendment to make it
Okay.
180
I'm
days.
going to move that the proposal be amended to a 6-month extension.
Get that?
Discussion? You take a roll now on the,
To amend the
and then
option
to the,
to 6 months?
yep.
Okay. Pitts?
Aye.
Lasky?
Aye.
Stan?
Aye.
Belter?
Aye.
Birmingham?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye. We have to now we have to do the resolution as amended to be 6 months, not 5. So we need a motion on that, correct?
Do we need a move?
That's what we just
Just did.
Amended motion, yeah.
Just voted on the amended motion?
No, we voted on the amended, on the
On the
amendment.
amendment.
The amendment
Now we
to the
need,
motion.
Now we have to vote on the
Vote on
Vote
the,
on the.
resolution
Yes.
with the
That's-
amendment.
that's what I thought, yes.
Well, I'll move approval of amended 17-09.
Second? Any discussion? Would you please take the roll?
Pitts?
Aye.
Lasky?
aye.
Stan?
Aye.
Belter?
Aye.
Birmingham?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Carried 6.
Next is Resolution 17-10, approve continuing urban green space use northeast corner of Central Street and West Parkway Avenue. For those of you that aren't aware, that is an area in Middle Village, which is a block north of here. I need a
I move approval of 17-10.
second. Discussion? Go ahead.
My only discussion, I think I raised this before, first, 1710, 1711, kudos to the people of Middle Village for what they're doing there. My question, and I'm very ambivalent about it, is the fact that this is a very impermanent way to deal with things, with the assumption that if something ever came up, we could take it away. But every year that it gets approved, and as new improvements go in, and as expectations grow about the permanence of this, I just want to be sure that we all know what we're doing and what the expectations really are for this area. And I don't have an easy answer, but it does trouble me a little bit.
I do have one comment or question. I drove past the little pocket park in the corner of Central and Parkway on the way here. We're getting into a very hot time of the year, and now the rain has stopped finally. But it's starting to look a little weedy. Now, do we have a contact in the neighborhood association that is sort of taking the lead on the maintenance?
Yeah, Mrs. Palmieri.
We have a device in this whole agreement that says, "Put your watering can out there." I mean, how are we ensuring that this is being properly maintained, other than driving by?
Go by pretty regularly. It's not that far from City
Well,
Hall.
no, and we're happy with the way they're being maintained, and
The times I've walked by over the summer, I've been satisfied.
I've seen children, small children playing there.
And the neighbor to the east of the property with the little pocket park, they're doing a big renovation project right now, and that was,
On an Ida and Franklin.
yes, I believe.
Okay, good.
I was very happy to see that taking place. That's one of the reasons we were doing this project, to improve the neighborhood.
A question for Alan, but I mean, basically, the city doesn't have any other plans for this. So
There are no.
what we could be looking at is 15 years of one-year renewals, or maybe an infinite number of one-year renewals. Now, doesn't that practically, come to certainly the expectation that this is going to be a public space?
I think that's why it's important to keep it annually, to make sure that it's maintained
So
properly through the
really,
years.
I mean, really, the annual, it really doesn't have anything to do with the possibility of developing it for something else, and really is a way of maintaining that it's kept up.
Short term, I think it's for making sure it's kept up. Long term, we could have a development proposal in that neighborhood. It's nothing that I'm expecting anytime soon, but I think it is within the realm of possibility that it could happen. And I think that's further down the road, so it's not something that's all that critical at this point in time. But we did, in the short term, remove a lot of blight and put in an asset to the neighborhood, which I think is helping the neighborhood in general, because just about every house around these properties have improved their houses.
But to Steve's point, is they
Oh,
do
yeah.
permanent structures on an annual renewable lease. As soon as we didn't renew it, they'd have to be knocked down, taken out, and property be returned to green space, right? So they should have guidance as to.
Yes.
If they're doing that, they should have some guidance to proceed to a longer term arrangement with the city.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be on the city council when
To
the
bulldoze it.
proposal comes up and says somebody wants to build a house there, and there are these fairly permanent types of things in there, and expectations, because they've been around for a long time.
You have with an interim use. I don't know how long that interim is going to last.
They could work toward a more permanent arrangement. Certainly
Especially with the track
environmental-
record.
Right.
Yes.
I think for now, I'd
Any-
like. Go ahead.
Any individual additional structure requires additional permitting to.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's another process to go through, which can be taken into consideration at that time. What makes sense on the property and what doesn't,
Yeah,
correct?
the
Okay.
RDA would have to approve any future permanent structures on the property.
We'll approve the stonework.
Let's see, it went through the RDA and is it Plan Commission
I
too?
don't remember.
Yeah, the RDA originally
We did, okay.
approved
Oh,
it,
yeah.
Plan
Okay.
Commission and council
Yeah.
originally.
Because they used some great neighborhoods money is what I vaguely remember.
Looks nice, looks great. I mean,
Is there anything in the conditional use permit that, would that be the place where it would be to say that if there is a developer that wants to come and do something on the property, that they can do that mid-year as opposed to wait for the cycle to come up again?
Or we could work in something there's gonna be a certain amount of notice before we do something like that, because in theory, you could reject it today and they'd get no notice, and that wouldn't feel right.
house next door and put an offer in it.
I like keeping it annual right now because that neighborhood is very highly rental. I think it's important to have at least a resident, a homeowner there, take the lead on maintaining these properties, or not both, but I think we need that annual look back at what's going on. Steve?
I just think it'd be a good idea if there were some discussions, between the city and the neighborhood about longer-term expectations and understandings, just so that we don't ever get caught with a surprise. I mean, they can be very informal, but I think it'd be a good idea.
We can follow up with the neighborhood leadership.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Would you please take the roll?
Hintz,
Aye.
Lasky,
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Birmingham,
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Carried 6.
Next resolution, 17-11, approve continuing urban green space use, southeast corner of Ida Avenue and Franklin.
Move resolution 17-11.
Second? Discussion. This is about 2 blocks away from the, if there's no discussion, would you please take the roll?
Hintz,
Aye.
Lasky,
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Birmingham,
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Carried 6.
Next, we have resolution 17-12, approved land disposition of vacant lot formerly 503 Wagoo Avenue to David Kozlowski and Geraldine Kozlowski for $2,500.
Move 1712.
Second?
Second. Any discussion?
Right, a sale.
Pardon?
A sale.
The sale.
Cash in.
Making money too.
Now, the people that are buying this live next door on Broad Street. They're just acquiring the land to have more yard and, okay. Okay, good. That's the intent of some of this stuff, these oddball lots.
If you recall, that was a blighted, half-burned-out house, so it was a detriment to the whole neighborhood, and anybody using Wagoo plainly saw it each time.
For close to half a decade. Any further discussion?
Does this property go on the tax roll at $3,500, or does it then go to fair market value?
If they combine it, it'll go to fair market value is my expectation. And I believe the deal was they were going to combine that property. It'll be a
Great.
nice lot then, if it kind of almost restores it to what a regular lot should be sized.
That's good. No further discussion, would you take the roll?
Hintz,
Aye.
Lasky,
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Birmingham,
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Carried 6.
Next is Resolution 17-13, determination of necessity, established fair market value, authorized purchase, 645 Jefferson Street, $42,500. Motion and a second.
I'll move resolution 17-13.
Second?
Discussion. Who is buying the land when? What is the intended use?
You recall the RDA purchased the property, and right now, Mr. Wiesenberg has option on all the property to the north. They had talked about trying to combine with property on Main Street, and this property would actually touch on the vacant lot that is on Main Street. So it makes the rest of the Jefferson project more feasible, because they'll have more land to work with and spread some of those fixed costs over. And the building itself meets the same criteria that the rest of the buildings we acquired and demolished. Unfortunately, it's declined over the years, and the owner offered it to the city at 50 cents on the dollar, and we do have block grant funds available for this type of blight elimination and for land assembly for redevelopment. The policy of the RDA in the past to buy up that block so it could be redeveloped. And this is about the last residential lot that we would include.
And Chet's still working on the final project?
Yes,
Talked about a month ago, yeah.
Yes, They're still working on that.
We have to own, or the city has to fund the demolition, is that right?
Yes, if we buy it, we fund the demolition, the asbestos removal and the demolition of the non-asbestos.
Further discussion? Please take the roll.
Prince. Lasky.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
Belter.
Aye.
Birmingham.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Carried 6.
Resolution 17-14, approve land disposition of abundant sliver of land east of Dawes Street to Annex 71 LLC. And a motion and a second.
So moved?
Second.
Discussion.
A legal description on this with meets and bounds? Or is it just a GPS survey correction, I would assume?
I've not seen the legal description, but I imagine there is one.
There is one in
Because
the
with an
title.
arc,
Yes.
yes.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
Because this is an older parcel, so I think they had to do that.
there's stakes up there. Well,
There
Not
should have,
buildable.
been.
How do you stake
For
a
that.
sliver?
What's
How
that?
do you stake a sliver?
With a toothpick.
they do it with
That's-
R, they'll define the R.
Yeah, they defined the arc with a radius.
Is that a
Absolutely.
legal term, a sliver?
You can
I
kind
thought it was a
of,
typo. It
you can see it, it's a
It's-
sliver. It doesn't-
How wide is it at the
10 feet
widest?
wide,
To the widest side.
on the widest side, yeah.
That's
And it
buildable.
goes down
On
to
the-
1 point on the west
I
end.
think it's 2.72 on the R. Yeah.
Not buildable, huh?
Not for anything I can think of.
Yeah.
We're not charging for this land?
No, we're hoping to actually,
Give it away.
Give it away.
not responsible for any of the environmental, they're buying it as is. Which is worth something to the city at this point in time.
Is it just for fun? Is there a reason to do it for $1 versus 0?
Uh,
I don't know why that ever happens that way, but.
I don't know, you have to have a dollar amount, so, for the transfer returns,
right.
so it has to be minimum of.
$1.
I talked enough about this.
It's a credo.
All right.
Credo.
Please take the roll.
Prince.
Aye.
Lasky.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
Belter.
Aye.
Birmingham.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
No more
Carried
folks
6.
to squeeze out of that one.
Last resolution is 17-15, declare and approve disposition of surplus property to Habitat for Humanity of Oshkosh Restore. Need a motion and a second.
I move 1715.
Second.
Discussion? I have one question. Is this an open-ended contract with them?
No, I think we run this every 3 years,
Yes,
Oh, but anything we take,
but in the meantime, yes.
right, it's a 3-year,
Yes.
come and get
So
it.
that house on Jefferson, the property that we would offer to them prior to demolition, it does save the city money because it's all less to the landfill.
We've talked about making sure other nonprofits are aware of their ability to do some things like this if they want to. I mean, we would have an exclusive contract with Habitat
At this point in time, we would make this an exclusive contract
for
to
this,
Habitat,
but
yes.
for other properties.
Let's see, if we want to open it up for other nonprofits, which we did the last time we did this,
Do an RFP or?
just contacted them and asked them if they were interested. We didn't ask for an RFP.
But what we're voting on is for 3 years with Habitat, for anything that we acquire and need.
Demolition.
5 years, right? Today.
Is it
no, 3, 17 to 19.
I'm sorry, my
For another 5 years.
memo's wrong.
It's just
Oh,
for
yeah.
another
It says-
5 years in memo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How come I can remember 3 years? Not when I'm actually writing it.
No,
Any further discussion? Would you please take the roll?
Hintz,
Aye.
Lasky,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Belter,
Aye.
Birmingham,
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Carried 6.
We have discussion for the 7 and 800 blocks of South Main Street regarding environmental testing and possible deaths.
If I could kick it off, Chairman, the 2 lots there on Main Street, one on the 7th and 8th 100 block, the west side between 7th and 8th Avenue. The RDA is owned for many years, and the other parcel is on the east side of Main Street between 8th and 9th. Again, the RDA has owned that for many years. It's been a long time since the city's tested anything regarding the contamination on those properties. We know from about 10 to 15 years ago, both those parcels had significant remediation needs for the redevelopment of those parcels. And we're bringing it to the RDA's attention because now we expect more people to be interested in redeveloping these sites. And the initial numbers that our consultant AECOM has estimated to remediate both those sites is somewhere in the $800,000 to $1 million for those individual blocks. 800,000 to $1 million for one block, and then 800,000 to $1 million on a second block. So we're talking 1.6 to $2 million if you're looking at both. So I just want to make sure you understand that's a major cost for remediation. On the remediation side, there was phase 1 and some phase 2 testing done 10 or 15 years ago, but nothing's been done since then. And if we're starting to entertain serious interest in that property, people are going to ask us, and we've already gotten the questions, how big is the plume? Has the plume moved? Has it migrated any direction? And right now, we don't have any answers to any of those questions right now. It'd be a perfect example of time to say, well, you're buying it as is. We don't know exactly where it is. This is what we know from 10 or 15 years ago. Most people are not going to be satisfied with that answer, has been our experience. And I do have the guys from AECOM, Mr. Paul Tim and Mr. Andrew Mott, who are more familiar with the specific concerns from 10 or 15 years ago that predate myself at least, and maybe can give you a little insight as to what could or should be done regarding environmental testing prior to any potential disposition of that land.
Can we do a use restriction and avoid the environmental issues? I mean, if you cap it and it's defined as parking only, it's not necessarily needs to be remediated?
That would,
It still has to be remediated. Anytime you remove the existing cap, which is green grass.
Which we planted, right?
So even with a parking lot, you will have some environmental remediation required. Because you're removing soil.
Right.
Mr.
But-
Couple slides.
Yeah,
here.
let's
And why
have
don't you
Paul
gentlemen
come
come
in.
forward?
Up on the,
I think most of you know me, I'm Paul Tim with ACOM. I've had the distinct pleasure of working on these sites since I had hair. They've been sitting, when we took over the sites, I helped with the acquisition of the properties, demolition of the properties. We found some environmental issues with the properties, and at that point, we decided to let it sit. The DNR allowed us to leave it as is. We put the grass and sod cap on it and left everything set. So what we have, these two sites, you know, they're in,
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Go ahead.
Did they put in a monitoring well in, or not?
we have a disjointed monitoring wells. There was a Marathon gas station. I'll kind of go into that in a minute. So we have some groundwater information in one spot.
Okay.
We found some tanks in another. We know there was an old dry cleaner in another. So you have all
Got it,
these
okay.
little issues. So what we're looking at that, and I've sat down with Mr. Davis and Darlene with a few developers, and we look at put opinion and probable cost for development. And right now, we don't have enough detailed information to give I want to say, a sharp pencil number. So that's where that $800 million number comes from. It's a big, scary number, but we really don't know exactly where the plumes are. The DNR is changing its rules and regulations, so we have that challenge, so the price tag keeps going up. It's not getting cheaper over time, it's getting more expensive. So as we sit down with developers and go through these things, we have some challenges. So this is where across from the former Miles Kimball's was acquired in the early 2000s. There was multiple sites. We took down a house. We took down Crohn's paper. There's a couple storage facilities, which are the two rectangles in the middle. We found an underground storage tank with that. We acquired a Marathon gas station, which was fairly well delineated. That's where we have the plume, the kidney-shaped piece there with groundwater impacts. Then to the south, the Heiss Bakery, which had formerly been used as a dry cleaner at one point. So we have solvents. Let's see here, if I go to the next one, I think we talked through this. We have potential with solvents, chlorinated solids, petroleum we know is there, several underground storage tanks that we took out that we did find small amount of petroleum left in place, or fuel oil. Urban fill, which is historic foundry sand, wood chips. There's a couple feet of that out here. So at least on that site, these are the things we know about. What I'd like to consider is doing some more environmental work, enough to get some more dots and information on the map so we can put more of a better developer packet together for information. How I'd approach this is follow the VPLE program guidelines that we do on our other brownfield sites. So this work that we do would hopefully account towards that, because more than likely if you move into a developer's package, it'd be a VPLE program for property transfer. That's how you follow through it. Basically the sites are the same size, so you're going to see this slide again. What we're looking at is about 12 soil borings, a couple of monitoring wells, some more samples collected for VOCs is for solvents, PAHs is more petroleum, metals is more to do, the RECRA is metals to do with foundry sands. Look at groundwater a little bit. See if there's some vapor issues. That's what the 2 to 3 vapor sampling points for, because solvents have become a very hot button for the DNR. So we want to make sure that, one, to see if there's solvent there that's giving vapors, then we have to work with the developer to come up with a vapor management system. If there's no vapors there, then we're good to go. That's a big dollar swing when we're looking at whether a development makes sense or not. The approximate cost here, the breakdown would be about $7,000 for our services. Most of it's subcontracting with drilling and analytical labs. That's where the real big dollars come in here. The second site, former Miles Kimball's, which is now in the Sawdust District, I believe. Kitty Corner. We took down the buildings there, worked with the acquisition. This site has its own challenges with a former filling station, foundry operations. We had underground storage tank there. I can't quite read that from here. Let's see here, painting facility, some junkyard, a gasoline storage area, and a paper making factory off in the corner. Again, this is similar size site. Old is industrial. We have urban fill, I believe up to 10, 12 feet in depth here, because we're getting closer to the water body, Lake Winnebago. So anything to the east of this is all man-made land, basically. We have, like Mr. Davis had said, we have some beginning information. We did enough to understand the sites and make sure we were grant eligible in the beginning phases. We did have a DNR or EPA cleanup grant at one time, but we couldn't find a development to match the time frame of the grant. So we had to let that go back. But that has the same, basically the same type of challenges with petroleum, chlorinated solvents. Methane is potentially being generated from the wood chips and stuff that's there. So that's another vapor that we have to take into consideration. So the final thing, same slide as before, basically the same, because the site's the same. We have a number of locations. We surround it the different areas, get the information, compile it into a developer packet. Any questions?
Those lab costs are one time, Paul?
Yes.
So there's no continued monitoring? Is there
Well,
risk to?
There could
the-
be continuing monitoring, there will be continuing monitoring during development and maybe after development, depending on what you get into. I'm talking with Darlene, this would follow the same package where we get a developer come in, we look at the site design of the building, we work with the DNR to get approval. We can do a soil groundwater management plan, and if there's groundwater impacts that need, usually it's 8 quarters, so 2 years of monitoring required. But that would be a separate phase. This would be, probably give us a good indication if we're going to have to do that or not.
As we know, this could open the door to DNR requirements to remediate and pay a lot more money than this $30,000 or so.
Well, I think you already have the liability.
Correct, but
You own the land, you own the responsibilities there. This, I don't believe it would trigger an immediate response to the DNR. I believe it's gonna work that we're gonna have to do anyways to promote development on the site. So we're trying to get that next little baby step to convince a developer to grab this site, that their risks are manageable. So that's the roadblock we've run into several meetings that we've been involved. We sit down and we talk about these things, and they start taking their building and they're like, well, how can I avoid the petroleum impacts? So those are the lines we need to delineate a little better. Some of the challenges are is because the focus or the preference of the city is to have street close high development. You can see on the slides, at least back at this site, that's where our majority of our issues are. So I think it's a future vision versus development opportunity question that we've got to work through, and what's feasible or not.
As far as that particular picture goes, you could almost sell the western half of the property because there really aren't any environmental problems with the western half, but the eastern half has all of it or a lot of it. And would you be willing to part with the good part and keep the hard to remediate site, or would you want to keep it as a package so that somebody has to take on not just the easy stuff but the hard stuff at the same time?
When will the information be ready for the developers to be able to review?
It'll probably take 2 or 3 months.
That's not long at all, okay, that's great.
Ellen, what type of developments have been discussed?
A mixture, I mean, commercial and residential. People are, no industrial, but it's commercial and residential. And the residential is more the, correct me if I'm wrong, the residential requires a higher standard for the remediation, so that's why
Yes.
when we're talking about moving parking lots around, that has a big impact on those project costs, that's for sure. What's that?
Oh,
I think
Worst case scenario, if it's full of as much stuff as we think it is, the cost to remediate is how much?
$1 million for each block, so $2 million for those 2 parcels. And that would, I'm assuming a worst-case scenario where you'd want to do a residential for the worst part of the property?
Excavating a majority of the material that's there to make it a cleaner site. That's preliminary.
How many remediation levels are they? I mean, are they specified levels?
I don't know that one. Mr. Tim?
Well, you have residential standards,
That's
well, yes, residential would be the most restrictive, we have industrial standards, and then there's everything in between.
Okay.
Like if somebody wanted to do just a commercial shop, that would be different from the industrial and the residential. It
See,
depends
once you
on
get into
actual.
non-permanent residence, then the DNR regulations back off a little bit, because your exposure is limited to potential issues like vapor. But there's certain things, no matter what, we have to do. We have to sample the soil, we gotta understand the groundwater, we gotta understand the vapors for all the different types of development. That's why we're looking at this is the minimum we'd recommend, because we know it'd be useful on multiple different options for the site.
So basically, the determination of what the necessary remediation plan is really both developer specific and site specific. We're not looking at broader, other than the categories that you just
The
indicated.
end use dictates the remedial objectives.
What is actually
We own now the land north of the, I keep calling it Hofmaster, but that's what it was. With the bowling alley and the building next
Yes.
to it, are the chances as good that that would have the same problems that this site has?
I expect there'll be some kind of environmental remediation that has to be done based on I think the bowling alley used to be a garage,
I think you're right.
repair garage before that, so I suspect there's gonna be something on that part of the property. We also own the piece where H&M is. I've been told that's been a lot of different industrial uses, including foundries in the past, so I expect, like I said in the past, anything on the south side, you're gonna either find fill or contamination from a previous land use. It's hard to avoid that anywhere on the south side. At least in the redevelopment area that the RDA has been concentrating their effort on.
Alan, how would you sell the Miles Kimball lot for two 16-unit multifamily buildings if you have to remediate it for 1.5 million? Who pays the 1.5 million, and how does it cash flow into the project?
I don't think you can.
Right, that's
Yeah.
the question, right?
You're gonna need a lot more value to make anything cash flow with all
But in-
the,
And that's just
But
one lot.
until we
you know.
know any information, we don't have anything to go on, so that's the whole purpose of this.
yeah, that's
I'm
why
not-
we wanted
yeah.
to discuss it with you, because we're kind of at a standstill as to what we're going to be able to do with these two blocks without your input and some direction as to where we need to go. Cause otherwise, I think it's gonna stay vacant for a long time.
We've got $3,500 now.
That's true.
Another 42,000. That's a lot of money to find, I mean, in the current
Yes.
$2 million. I mean, is that the worst-case scenario, or could it be higher? And I think you said that some of that area was landfill, or it was claimed from the lake, or back then the
Yeah,
swamp?
well, because of the history of the Oshkosh, any lower areas tend to get filled in with one foundry sand or wood chips. Probably wood chips first, foundry sand second. So this part of Oshkosh was very low, from basically Main Street east was all man-made land, concrete, rubble, whatever, it just kept getting pushed out.
Oh, okay.
As far as a worst-case scenario, yes, that's probably a high degree, I'm gonna be very careful, a high degree that's the worst-case scenario. Because we've done a lot of work demoing the site, pulling the foundations. We did phase ones on the majority of the property before they were purchased, so we understood potentials. I mean, we kind of went in at that time with eyes open as to what it was, but the vision was development wasn't gonna be spurred unless someone stepped in and helped acquire it, put it together in one parcel, and get rid of the buildings. Because you're one step closer to development the way it is now, because it's a big thing to start, demo it, clean it up, and develop it, and make those numbers work.
But, so that's technically 2 million here, and once we take down Rec Lane's building, we'll incur more costs and another, I don't, maybe not another million, but we are looking at lots of millions of dollars for this whole
On
area.
Marion Road, we had similar challenges because of Universal Foundry.
Was
and
there,
we got it all figured out.
Worker Marine.
Grants,
Yeah, we got a lot of grants.
grants are very important.
And that kind of depends on what project is going on, because you actually have to have a developer with a project before you can actually make a grant application. We just can't do one on spec.
This doesn't require action at this point, right?
Not at this time, but back from the RDA would help the staff put together either a proposal or an approach that we could bring back at a future meeting to get actual action.
I think it's simple. I think it's is our role as a committee, and I think that it meets exactly what we're here to do. So there's no problem. I don't see any issues with this.
Yeah, I agree with Jason. You know, it's not a cheerful discussion, we have to figure it out.
My
Longer
goal is
wait.
to bring it down, that number down. I'll only be able to go so far until we have a developer with a footprint sitting in front of us, though. That's when we can really fine tune it. We need this step to get there. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bring better news next time.
I frequently get blamed for this.
I know, it's all your fault.
When you were a kid, you dumped all that stuff there, right?
Back when I had here.
Back when you had.
We never changed the tractor oil right under the dirt.
But I always said farmers build on highland, developers build in swamps, and that's, we have flooding problems in this city, or did. Okay, Mr. Davis, Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's see, the update on the Buckstaff property is construction continues on site, and the city recently opened the bids and awarded bids for the infrastructure work, and we're still planning on having everything done by the end of November is what I remember for this whole project, both on site and all the utilities and streets. So hopefully you'll see the construction starting in the streets later. They were supposed to start last week for the street and utility work. Let's see, any questions on Buckstaff? Healthy Neighborhood Initiative, that's the.
I do have a question on that. When can we change the name of the property?
Well, we call it the Buckstaff property because the RDA bought it as right now when I do reports to the council, I think I call it the Arena Project now. Would you like me to change it to the Arena Project?
I think that's fair. You know,
Okay.
I think we've moved
That's-
beyond Buckstaff, right?
Yes, we have. Good suggestion.
Proud owners, you can call it whatever you.
I think the Buckstaff family's taken enough hits over this.
Okay. Healthy Neighborhood Initiative. If you recall, we rehabbed 1017 Bowen Street over the winter and we put it on the market this spring. We're asking $122,500. We had multiple parties tour the property, but none have made the offer. At this point in time, does the RDA want us to consider retaining a real estate agent and getting some quotes on real estate representation? Or continue with existing staff?
Well, if you're not getting offers, obviously there are carrying costs that
Mm-hmm.
you have to deal with, and so if it sells sooner rather than later, it's still gonna be ahead in terms of the real estate commission.
You have it listed on Zillow?
Yes. And forsalebyowner.com.
And the market's gonna slow down now because we're getting into the school season and the holidays, so.
List it. List it.
We will bring that back then. Morgan District update. If you recall, we've been working on the final design and bidding for that next section of the Riverwalk west of Oregon Street. If you recall, the DNR actually gave us a little extra money here this spring, so we have $800,000 in grants for the next phase towards Boat Works. So we'll be bidding that and awarding the bid in the next month or month and a half is what I remember. And we also put in a grant application for the section farthest to the west over by the Boat Works to bring that the bridge down to ground level and down to the lagoon, and we'll try to connect it as close as we can around the lagoon. Hopefully we'll hear about that second award in late 2017. But I'm not holding my breath because they didn't tell us about this last grant until late into the year. So hopefully if the state adopts a budget, we'll know sooner rather than later.
We hope to have the Riverwalk completed all the way to South Main by the,
If we get really good bids, we could get it done next year in 2018.
by the end of 2018.
Around the lagoon?
Around the lagoon. That's if we get really good bids. If we don't, then it might take an extra year in
From
2019.
the kayak bridge south, all the way through all the way through
Yes.
Morgan?
Yes, well, we're getting to the lagoon on the east side with this year's grant, and we put in next year's grant, and we take it from the kayak side to the lagoon. We're putting in alternates to see if we can stretch that grant money and see how far we can get it around. There's no guarantees it's gonna be able to get around, though. It kinda depends on the bids. So worst case scenario, I'm saying 2019. But I'm optimistic at 2018.
That is to have it all the way to Oregon Street.
That's to have it all the way to Oregon.
Everything past the former Morgan Company.
Exactly, and we have already got it done east of Oregon over to the dockside.
Right.
So we're completely done with the Morgan property.
So the goal is the end of 2018.
That's the goal. But 2019 still might be how it turns out, depending on the bids. Let's see. Staff is still working with Mr. Dumke, Art Dumke, on the Pioneer project. Nothing to report at this time, though. And the granary parcel was approved as part of the granary redevelopment project, the Plan Commission and City Council. So I expect we'll be selling that land sometime in the next few months to Mr. Andy Dumke and Chet Wiesenberg and their partners. And if I recall, there was also another question about the South Shore regarding the old Miles Kimball building, and I believe Mr. Burns contacted Miss Brandt just recently since this went out.
Yes.
Could you give us an update?
Yes.
On the former Miles Kimball property at the corner of 9th and South Main. He's hoping, he has his contractors lined up, and he's hoping within the next couple of weeks to come in to get permits and see what other documentation he needs to submit for those permits and be starting interior work. Mr. Burns indicated he will be doing a majority of the exterior work, the tuck pointing and so forth. So hopefully in the next few months, we should be seeing interior developments, but not too much exterior, except for the cutting in of the windows. He was putting additional windows in for some of the units, so you might see some of that.
Has anyone toured the building in a while?
Mr. Davis and I did a year and a half
Last
ago,
winter?
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole interior is gutted and ready for construction, so.
Like it's ready.
When I read the May minutes, it says that the windows would be cut in June, and we're starting August tomorrow.
No.
Can't we put a time frame on this of some sort? That building has been there for,
5 years.
yeah, I mean, and it's,
If there's one thing
Going nowhere.
I've heard from the RDA is that we don't sell land without a performance requirement anymore, which this one did not have a performance requirement.
Lesson learned.
Said he's still very interested in doing the project. He wants to restore the building. He does not want to tear it down, so.
Did he apply for any historic tax credits?
I don't know. I don't know.
It was originally a carriage factory. They called them factories back then, but carriage works. Might be worth raising the question with him. I qualify, but
I can bring it to his attention. There was another question from a board member on properties that the city owned, between the city and the RDA owned in the South Shore area. So Andrea's going to bring up a map here. All the ones outlined in red are the ones that the RDA owns, and then there's just 2 that the city owns. One up there on 4th, which is the old sanitation garage, and I'm not sure what that one is down off from South Park. I believe it's a former railroad parcel.
Right away.
So we have a few scattered sites. Oh, and the Walleye's Tavern did come down last week, so that was on the corner of 6th and Michigan, so that's down, and for sale sign is out. So hopefully we can get some interest in a new residential home built there.
What is this sliver on the south? What is that?
That is former railroad property that this city RDA acquired for a parking lot for a trailhead development
Oh.
going from.
Part of the Riverwalk.
Coming along the Fox River South Shore all the way down through the Pioneer area. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on the properties that we own.
I think in the future, when we have discussions on offers to purchase your properties, it's not a bad idea to include this. Because we've talked about it multiple times about, you know, hey, what do we own and what's our philosophy? And this is a nice visual example.
Helpful, right.
Yeah.
Like the ones that we own between 8th and 9th, just to the east of Oregon. We're looking at land assemblage as property owners are looking to sell their properties. So we can do a redevelopment site like the townhouse development just to the east of that.
Is this just showing RDA properties that are owned in the south? Is there, what about the north?
There's other RDA properties on
Yes.
the north.
I just asked for the south of the.
Right.
Jefferson's our biggest hold
Yeah.
there on the north side, off the top of my head. Then there's the Marion Road, which there's 3 lots left in Marion Road that we have to sell as well. 2 of them have options and 1 does not.
Would it be helpful to know in this area between South Main and probably Oregon, how much of that is rental? Because I've had a lot of complaints about stuff on 10th Street between South Main and Oregon. I've driven past them and they're not safe at any speed. I mean, they're just awful. Steve, did you have a comment?
Well, I just had a question on the east 8th leg there. We got the bowling alley in the building, and then eventually, the warehouse. Does that, the portion that is brick, is that included in the warehouse, or?
The brick along the south
Kind of in-
side, I
yeah,
think it's
on the
both
south
the
side that's,
upholstery shop and the bowling alley, I think have brick on them.
Okay, but eventually, we control the demolition of the whole side there?
No.
No. we
Not the
don't.
whole thing.
No.
Lewix actually wraps
Well,
around there as
oh,
well.
Lewix wraps around.
Yes, they
So
do.
is that the part that's the smaller brick?
It's like right in the middle. It's like
Yeah.
an L that goes right
Yeah.
behind the bowling alley.
Okay, so that's the Lewix, so we don't have that.
Building.
So it's gonna be difficult to get the.
We don't have it yet.
Pro shop,
don't have it
bowling
yet.
alley down, because those, all the walls are
What do you got
sheer.
planned, Jason?
Well, no, but I mean, it's a very interesting
Yeah,
conundrum for the property owner to be in, surrounded by
yeah,
a development area, so.
Back to Stephen's question.
yeah,
Building on the corner, which is basically brick, the brick fell off half of it.
yeah.
But there's some buildings going east of there, did we also get that in the acquisition, or is that sort of just some old brick building that's stuck between what we own now and what Lewick owns?
No,
Nope, we own it all up to Lewix
Yes.
now.
So we don't know.
we own on
Old
both
brick is-
sides.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. And I think it took the brick coming down for them to actually become a motivated seller.
Self-demoing.
Do-it-yourself project.
But
All the
because those.
fireworks in that
Yeah,
green space, that might
because
help.
those buildings all share walls and the roof line, it's going to be a challenge to try and take all of them off, so I'm not sure. We might have to hire engineers to tell us if we can even do it. Yeah, so.
Other discussions or comments before we adjourn? I'll need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Adjourned.
Thank you.
Dr.